Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Z Podcast. Today, we're going to be having a very interesting and thought provoking conversation with our very own Allanah Miller. Allanah is a senior EAM and change management consultant who is very experienced in Maximo and mobile work applications. She has specialized skills in product ownership, client success, team management, change management, and training, design, and delivery. Thank you, Allanah, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Allanah, before we get started into some of the more technical questions, I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your background and how you got started in technology consulting.
Sure, I'd love to share my story. So way back in 2012, I graduated from Rutgers University in New Jersey with a degree in industrial engineering. And I actually interned with Accenture my junior year of college. And so I graduated with a full-time offer from Accenture, and they moved me from New Jersey to the Austin, Texas office. But I really fell in love with tech consulting in my first nuclear project. It was a mobile work solution, very similar to Maximo Mobile is today. But essentially for nuclear plants, we converted paper work orders to iPads. So I was really in the work management section there. And I had an amazing mentor, Jeff Colburn, who took the time to explain everything to me. The process itself of work management, the technology benefits were super clear. The savings were obvious. I got to a point where I really understood the business. I really understood the client needs and how to help. And I think that's what technology consulting is all about. And that's really what I've spent my whole professional career so far doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I will say that there's nothing like a good mentor to help you, especially at the beginning of your career, to really kind of supplement your understanding, especially of something that can get a little bit, complicated, like work management. And we're talking about going from workpads to paperwork to iPads.
Totally.
Can you tell us how that transformed? You went from iPads. How did you get into Maximo itself?
Yeah, so actually my first couple of nuclear plants, we did the mobile work package connecting to a different EAM. We actually did Asset Suite at Exelon and Duke, but essentially they would use the EAM system, Asset Suite, to plan the work orders. And then, it would go over to the iPads. And essentially Maximo does very much the same stuff as Asset Suite. You plan work orders in Maximo, and I eventually got to do a mobile work package project with Southern Nuclear, who had Maximo. And so we hooked a electronic work package software into Maximo. But I really only encountered my first full Maximo upgrade project back in 2019 for Vistra's Comanche Peak nuclear power plant in Texas. And that took a Maximo version 5.2. And we had to upgrade it to a version 7.6. So it's a very large gap. Yeah, the tables look different. Everything looks very different. And I was the change management and training lead. But yet again, I've had so many amazing people in my career who have been so supportive. The functional manager on that project, Michael Garris, really helped me into the functional side, which was really to help define requirements so I could deeply understand the changes. And so we did that kind of Maximo project. But when COVID hit, I actually moved to American Electric Power, DC Cook plant in Michigan. And that was my first Asset Suite plant to Maximo. And so it kind of came full circle as one EAM to another EAM. And that was kind of when I left the mobile work piece behind. And really my whole career, essentially, since then, since 2019, has been defined by Maximo, doing Maximo upgrades, transformations. And really that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years now.
Thank you. So, during that time, it seems like you had a lot of robust experience, and you mentioned change management and your introduction to change management. Can you tell us more about how you got into change management and the role that plays with, your developing expertise in Maximo?
Sure. Yeah. I actually found change management through functional consulting
Okay.
because, like I mentioned, everything kind of clicked into place for me in consulting as a whole when I realized I wanted to understand the client business and the client
Mm-hmm.
needs. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I found functional consulting. So a lot of people don't necessarily know what that means, but it just means that I sit between the business and the client and the
Mm-hmm.
technical team, right?
Mm.
Anytime we're doing software, the technical team is really hands-on keyboard programming, but the
Yep.
business client that, they don't always speak the same language. So
Yeah.
functional consulting, I get to be the translator or the mediator between the two to ensure that we're meeting the client needs and that technical gets the answers that they need. And
Yeah.
that is actually what rocketed me into change management and training. Because once you understand the technical and the business side, you're able to kind of marry the two and distill the software information into a way that the business can understand it. And when you do that effectively, that's just training.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found that myself, being a consultant for a couple of years, is the disconnect sometimes, and we see this with people on the field, and the consultants or the people that kind of sit in more of the corporate offices, and there is just a gap that always needs to be addressed, of people who actually know the systems, who know how things actually work, and people who work more on some of the abstract bureaucratic nature of our work. So it's
Totally.
very important to marry the two.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've found in my years in technology consulting that the most successful and effective businesses are the ones that the technology side, the IT organization within the company is completely aligned with the business. When you have
Mhm.
them separated and they're not talking to each other, the technology people are putting tools in place for the business to use. And if the technology side doesn't understand what the business is doing or what's important to the business,
Mhm.
you end up with a tool that they don't want to use and it's not effective.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. So during this time, how would you say that you found your overall area of expertise? Because it seems like initially you were in something, more narrow, and that brought into, you're talking about change management and functional consulting and massing. How did you find your area of expertise to see what works for you, and also kind of what the needs of the industry are?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of fell into the transition from functional consulting into change management. On my last probably 4 or 5 projects, the way that most of the implementations go is, your technology and functional consultants come in first and we gather requirements and we look at what
Mm-hmm.
the business side is, we document all the requirements and then we build it. And then
Mm-hmm.
months and months later, you bring people in to actually create training materials and deliver the training because it just takes a long time to do.
Uh-huh.
And so what ended up happening is I would join projects very early on as functional and understand the business. And instead of me moving on to the next project to go do functional somewhere else, I would just transition into the training and change piece. And it was the most natural thing in the world. I had spent months and months learning about the business and documenting the business. And so it was really easy for me to just go ahead and say, these are all the things we need to train the business on. I know the processes. So, let's buckle down. And I would lead the training team and deliver training classes. And I just fell in love with it. The continuity of being able to start with the client from the very beginning all the way through delivery is really, I just build that expertise in the client business over time. And it was just incredibly natural. So that's a methodology that I've tried to take with every client because everyone needs to start from somewhere and end with training. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah. And I think what you're also doing during that time is you're building trust with the client. They've seen you,
Absolutely.
because, people can kind of step in and out of projects.
Hmm.
And first of all, that's not always seamless. Of course, as consultants, we always try to. But for them to know you from the beginning to the end, for them to kind of see you at the beginning, or the implementation or the assessment of a product, building relationships with them, and to see you at the end, training, what you've said we can do, and then bringing things to fruition. That's very important to building client trust, which is something that's very important to us.
Yeah,
So
continuity is key. Absolutely.
yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So Alana, you are one of our, Moss 8 experts, and we're lucky here at ZPro to have many experts in this field, really, experts with Maximo in general. Can you tell us a little bit more of what kind of change management and training is needed for Mass 8 upgrades and implementation efforts?
Yeah, well, and I'll even start with just saying why change management is important, because we actually do have to defend that quite a bit. Project management and change management is usually one of the first things that fall off, especially in technology upgrades, again, because this goes back to the disconnect between the people that are buying the tool and the people that are using the tool. The most important thing is putting the tool in place, but you need change management in order to teach people how to use the tool, because just putting the tool in place is not enough. And especially today, in today's technology landscape, technology is just changing so rapidly. We've seen it with infrastructure and the explosion of the cloud and software as a service. We're seeing it with AI. And it comes with these waves that just revolutionize how companies are doing business. And it just, my belief is that ultimately, though, underneath all this technology is people. People use the software tools, and if they don't know how or why they're using them, ultimately the businesses aren't going to be able to realize the full value of the technology they're investing their money in. And that's what we try to do as a company, is just help to train and prepare people to use the technology so that the business can just use this revolutionary tool and gain full advantage of it. And talk about revolutionary tools, Moss 8 is absolutely one of them. Moss 8 is an enterprise asset management software, but ultimately this is just, again, another technology tool that's in place to track work management, asset management, and supply chain. And each of these areas, they have processes in place to run a business. You need to buy things, you need to manage those things, you need to repair those things and maintain those things. And Maximo just helps you do that. But when a company is using this tool for the first time, or even upgrading to the tool looking totally different, sometimes they don't know what they don't know. They obviously know their business, but they don't know the full scope of what Maximo can help them to do. So, ZPro brings not just the knowledge of the tool, which a lot of, consulting companies bring, but that business knowledge of the client's business and what they need and their processes. So we can speak the client's language to guide them to make the right decisions, to guide them on the things they need to train and communicate on, so that they can perform their daily functions seamlessly in a tool that they may not have ever seen before. That's the real, the value in change management, especially in a Moss 8 implementation.
Yeah, definitely. And you were mentioning, I believe earlier, that you started off with Maximo like at 5.2.
Yeah.
And now we're at Moss 8, and I know you help clients with training and everything. What would you say is the biggest change over time, and what improvements over time with Moss 8 compared to previous versions?
Oh man, this is a big version upgrade. And honestly, again, my Moss 8, of course, is across all industries. So much of my experience has been in the nuclear space. And like I said, my first couple projects back in the 20 teens, a lot of the big players like Exelon and Duke had Asset Suite, but Maximo has been a real breakout player in the nuclear space. They have really, in the past, decades, they've really done the industry add-ons. So they have, specific nuclear modules for things. They've really come a long way in developing that. And then with this new Moss 8 jump, I mean, they're really adding on not just managing your enterprise asset management, but the add-ons like Health and Predict and Visual. They're really expanding the capabilities that you can get out of this. And so I think that's just been this Moss 8 jump is just going to be a really big revolutionary change. I think it's going to be able to bring in, some of that AI, some of that just a way deeper management of your assets and view, because it can take all this data from sensors and all this stuff and synthesize it and take it and put it in a format that, again, like we've been doing, put it in a format that the business can understand. The business themselves doesn't have to dig into all these tables and data. They're seeing things in a format where Maximo is synthesizing this data and telling you, hey, these are the things you should worry about, or these are my recommendations looking at all the data as a software. Here, person, take a look and focus your efforts here. And I think that's been really, really key and just a huge change.
Yeah, and that's very important. I got my master's in public policy, and we actually dealt with a lot with data, which I didn't know when I was going into the degree. I wanted something kind of non-data, non-math related,
No
or
such
statistics
thing.
related. And you couldn't escape it.
Mm-hmm.
And what our professors would say is everyone can have access to data, but not everyone can make sense of it.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone can tell a story with it.
Totally.
So I think there's always, we appreciate the evolution of these tools, and we utilize them ourselves, and we encourage our clients to do the same. But you really need to have experts and people that know the business also and the needs of clients to say, this is, the direction you're headed. This does or does not meet your needs, and this is how you could be doing things more efficiently. Just to name a few of the benefits of using tools like Mosse.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, in the past decades, we've gone from doing things on paper, manually inputting them into the technology, just having software tools hold our data. And now, I mean, then we've gone into mobility, gathering more data and metadata as things became more electronic. And now we're at a point where software's smart enough to look at the data itself and tell us what to worry about. And that is just, we're in an amazing time right now for technology, really, and companies can really take advantage of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Allanah, I have one last question before I let you go. Where do you see the future of Z Pro as far as it relates to, this evolution that we're seeing of Mosse, of change management, even as you said, we're talking about functional consulting. What do you see as our role that we can offer clients and offer the industries that we work in?
Yeah, I think honestly, having really worked in Maximo, I've lived Maximo for almost a decade on every day in and day out. And I think we as consultants, we really need to convince companies that it's worth the investment. A lot of companies out there are still back where some companies were back in the 2010s of they're just using their software to, manually input data and just to hold the data. And in order to actually get to a point where you can fully realize all the value that a software can bring, you need to get to a point where you can implement a tool that's powerful enough to do it, even if it's just standing it up at first so that it can start to capture your data. As the earlier you can start, the better, because then over time you can have it work for you. It's almost like an investment, right? Like have your money make money, invest and stand the software up to upgrade, and then have it start gathering data. And eventually over time, you can get to that point where the software is helping you manage your assets. And that's really where you're going to get the value. And like I said, without change management and training, no matter what tool you have in place, you're only ever just going to be using software to just hold data unless people know how to use it and you're capturing the correct data. So, and the only way to do that is with change management and training. So all of it really comes together, the technology piece, the software piece, and the change management piece. But we just need to help companies realize the value of it and to start as early as they can.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Great words of wisdom and insight. Thank you so much, Allanah. It's really been a pleasure to learn from you, and we hope our listeners feel the same way. Thank you again.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
It's been great. You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.